My name's Dave Walker. I inventor and designer of saxophones and other musical instruments, and I'm here with my mate Ed. Today we're going to talk about the sound and where the actual sound comes from, how you actually generate the tone, how you actually have the width sound. One of the main things that we're going to talk about is why some people have thin sounds and why other people have big, wide sounds. I mean, when you actually listen to Jerry Begonzi play, he's got this huge width at no volume. And when you actually watch him play, it's all about the actual voice box that he's actually using, and he's filling this area. If you see any photograph of him, you know, you can actually see it. So Ed's going to just demonstrate on how he starts his memory in his mouth and his chamber going by...
Yeah, I mean, this is basically my thing that I go to, particularly if I haven't played for a couple of days. And also... I mean, it's just generally a good warm up for me. I kind of it works for me, this one. So basically, what you want to do is before you do anything with this, is just basically cut the crook like that. Don't push down on this too hard. Just stopping the octave key from coming open, and flow. And you notice immediately
you can see how you're supporting the air.
You shouldn't do it too long, else you might hyperventilate. But basically, I can feel my abs already kicking in down here. So essentially,
so these are really tight. I could really punch you now, and
you wouldn't be. I'd punch you back, but you know, I wouldn't feel anything. But so kind of like, I don't know, a couple of minutes of doing that, just kind of. I mean, again, you know, this is a thing that you feel the benefits of. Basically, if you haven't played for a couple of days and you want to get back in touch with the horn again, I always go to this, and then that just gets all the air doing all the right things. I'm engaging with this, which I particularly like to do. It's not a requirement, but I like to use the cheeks as a chamber for certain things.
Because a lot of people think it's blowing in here, having your belly out and supporting and using all this part of your actual chamber. And what we're talking about is like an opera singer, you know, with the actual voice chamber in here.
There's nothing wrong with those other ways of doing it. I mean, everyone is different. It's just, for me personally, I like to put lots of air through the horn. I like to engage with this. I like to feel like my body's engaging with the instrument before I'm going to do anything else with it. So that's a concern. You know, that's a priority for me. Other people who find there are other ways of doing it. That's a completely different way for me, and I've just found this way which suits me, and it suits lots of other people as well. So then what I'm going to do after that, if I'm really going to have some time to spend with the horn. Oh, by the way, that quick warm up there, that's really good if you just have to kind of 9 o'clock in the morning. Need to warm. You don't have chance to do what I'm about to do now, and you just have to kickstart it. That I always find that really works. It's kind of like, it's just basically warming the body up. It's getting you to produce fast air that you want to put through it, and then I want to do something like this. So I'm going to just finger low B flat, which is basically means that all the holes are covered on the instrument, and I'm going to try the same thing. So first of all, I'm just going to do exactly the same thing I did before. So again, I'm pushing lots of air through the horn. But now you can hear it. And you should be able to hear the beginnings of the Overtone series, which is other notes, apart from that low B flat, that are generated from that note, on top of the harmonic series, basically from B flat. And I'm actually producing now some tones that are coming through, but I want to try and hold those back for as long as possible until I've really warmed. Again, I'm pushing fast, warm air through the horn. And this in winter is going to warm the instrument up, particularly if it's been in your case overnight. But I want as much of that air C sound in there as possible, because that's basically, again, it's kind of like, okay, if I'm doing the right stuff, then I'm getting all that kind of wind and air and sea noises and stuff like that. When I've done, say, 5 minutes of that, sometimes longer, if I really get into it. If it's first thing in the morning, the house is quiet, I might do 20 minutes of that. Yeah. Because it gets quite meditative. Yeah. You know, and so then you want to find a note which is, there's some venting up, there's some holes here, so you're going to have to think about how to not produce. You know, I was about to produce the tone there and it didn't quite come through. So that's even more difficult because of the vent. So there's less resistance. Yeah. So I have to create the resistance. Okay. And I'm creating the resistance now from the same process, but I'm really going to engage the abs here to kind of hold back the sound rather than pushing it through. So you can hear that sound coming through. I don't want to let it all the way through yet. Yeah. But that's the beginnings of a very, very quiet G. Again, I'm producing lots of wind and sea noises, and you can hear the G as an undertone there, and that's kind of coming through. You might hear some bits of the harmonic series again, the upper partials of the G coming through, and now this time I'll try and produce the tone at the quietest possible volume.
But it's still got width to it.
It's got width to it, and also it really helps because this horn is particularly resonant. So what I'm getting from the feedback from this is here because of the nickel neck, and also because of the way that you've built the instrument, because of the size of the bore. It's responding in that way that basically not every instrument is going to respond in that way. In fact, this is one of, old cons. The larger bore instruments basically respond in that kind of way. Mark 6s don't do that, not for me. I've tried to do that on Mark 6s. They will respond, but not with producing that amount of overtones. And Yamahas, again, less. This is a really, really resonant chamber that you've kind of created here, so that the sound, you hear that at low volume, the sound is big at a low volume.
I'll just explain how I did that, because when you came in to see me, and you were playing an SBA for 20 years, I think, before
more,
that.
30 years now.
30 years, yeah. You don't look that old, but you obviously
I'm not that old.
So he came in to see me, and I was repairing his SBA, and I said to him, I'm just making a saxophone, and kind of met one for you, and you said, yes, please, that'd be really good. And you were like wondering what it's going to be like when you actually start playing it, and how I can actually alter it and actually make the sound bigger and less restrictive in what I was doing. So I decided to put the nickel neck on it, and if you actually use a flute head joint and you actually ding the bottom of it, it goes ding really early. More denser material like silver, it goes with it all. So this helps you generate
the beginning of the note.
Beginning of the note at low volume, because it's taking the frequency in earlier into the actual thing. That then sends it into the body. The top half of the body is the same size as a Content M, so the neck will actually fit a Content M. Right. So that's where the width of sound comes from, in that sort of area.
In the first part.
In the first part, as you're doing it. And then the way you play, we're actually generating sound into the neck through the body. And the way I sort of describe it and actually think about it is it's like a bucket of water, and what we're doing is we're filling that bucket of water with air. It's like a bagpipe, or however you want to describe it, and that solidness of air is moving up and down to each frequency that you're actually generating. So the way you play, which is sometimes really loud, sometimes quiet, you're up and down jumping on the horn. This helps you with the stability
Yeah.
and the no restriction that's actually in the horn.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine when you're actually playing it, a lot of people think if they're blowing air through, it's all coming out of the bell.
Yeah.
And this is where everyone's thinking it wrong. So you as a player, if you're playing your saxophone and you're blowing through and you're thinking it's just escaping, that's where you need to rethink. And
No,
this
absolutely.
is exactly where you're
I mean,
coming from.
this is exactly what I started to discover. I mean, from some of the things that come from that no tone exercise, when I started to just experiment a little bit with, I mean, if you're playing the instrument conventionally, you tend to do think in that way because basically it's a natural way to think that the air just goes down there and it comes out there. Yeah. But if you're playing it slightly unconventionally, meaning that if you're using multiphonics or you're using alternative fingerings like this, you realize that that's not what's going on because basically the air is also trying to escape. Yeah. So the air is actually, every single one of these that it's going down, the air is actually caught in between there and it's actually trying to find a way out. Yeah. So it's, and if you open some of these vents, the air is coming out there, for example. So even better if when you use that top vent, if you do this. So I'm changing the color of that note by literally lifting the fingers up and down on other notes and keeping that this one completely down. And it's not quite the same note because the vents are affecting the tuning. But what you realize from that, you can actually feel the air kind of pushing against here because it's still trying to find the way out. And I came across this thing the other day that when you're playing at low volume, it feels, I can almost feel on that top vent that the air's kind of going this way, around, like that. And so the idea that air is directional and it's just kind of going there and that is only, some of the air of course does that. Yeah. But also some of the air is trying to find its way out here, and when it finds a way out, it's going to come out. Yeah. It's like sometimes if you put a microphone just here when you're recording, so you're just getting some of the air from here and a microphone here at the sound, and you kind of experiment with that. Where I've done a couple of recordings where there's been a mic very close to where the air comes out here, and something from the top here. In fact, at one point I had 6 microphones on one recording. So conventionally here. Here, above, and it's really interesting because if you start to analyze or you look at the sound from all those different microphones, there's much more sound that comes from out of the top left-hand vent than you ever
think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that bit of that, you're right. That bit here, the first bit, is really crucial, and of course because you've put this is not. I remember trying a couple of different materials, and the copper one really didn't work for me. Because you were saying that actually gives a louder sound.
It's like it doesn't resonate as early,
right?
So you have to put more air in it for it to sort of start, but then you get maybe a bigger sound. But for what you do, where you're wanting to breathe through it, it just didn't react early enough with it all. It's guys like Chewbacca and things like that who microphone down the bell, ramming air through it, and that's how they play.
Oh yeah, that's
the copper neck is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
They wouldn't be able to cope with this nickel neck on it.
The other thing that I noticed with this, that basically through playing the instrument and also when I adjusted to it, I started to use, in fact, less air to produce the same volume, which was really interesting because that kind of ties in with the resonance of the instrument.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so I'm not actually it doesn't feel like I'm ever forcing the air through, whereas on my old SBA I was like having to push a lot. And you kind of, you know, that can affect lots of small things like in tuning in the top end sometimes, you know, particularly with the older instruments, it can do that. This has got a balance between being just feels like I don't want to make that louder than that.
Yeah.
Because it feels like the sound is more present.
Yeah.
So unless I'm really on a rock or R&B gig, I'm not going to put much more air through the horn than that on a jazz gig, unless I'm kind of like playing maybe a really up-tempo burning thing where you sort of emotionally and psychologically you kind of start to push more air through the horn. But actually you don't really need to.
Yeah.
It's not that. I don't need to do that, but I probably might do that because of the energy of the band.
Yeah.
But really, that's basically my new forte, because I know that's going to carry.
It's got massive projection.
It's got a very
I remember
big
you saying
projection
that
too,
when you first got it, you took it on a gig and there were two guys having to mic up and you didn't have to mic up.
Yeah.
And they were like looking at you thinking, how's he getting that big sound?
Yeah.
And it's basically because of that section there.
Yeah.
And because it's wider, it's allowing you to have a wider bucket of air.
Yeah.
Which all you're doing, and this is where people think it goes through, but we're back to that subject again, where all we're doing is, as you're playing the note, it's playing the frequency, and it's just taking the top off, and all you're doing is filling it back up again.
Yeah.
So you're sustaining. Once you've generated the actual, by the speed of the air, like you were talking about with the crook, once you generate that, you're keeping that in there, you're just topping it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And moving it round.
Yeah, and also you can change the speed of the air as well, and it respond. This instrument responds instantaneously to that, so you can kind of go. So I'm trying to get that no tone, almost that no tone, and it's responding immediately. And that's me doing that.
Yeah.
But it's the instrument responding in that way. So that was, I mean, I didn't actually ever get anywhere near that on the SBA, and it's no disrespect to an SBA, but that's kind of, it was kind of, I didn't actually occur to me to experiment in that way. So a lot of the things that I'm doing now, I'm actually doing because of the instrument. I would say all the low volume stuff, like thinking about that before I'm going to go. All of that kind of overblowing thing, I'm not going to do that without actually engaging with that no tone exercise, because all of that helps when you come to do the other overblowing from the low B flat and B's and C's and C sharps, just to get the overtone series and to play in the third octave.
Yeah.
And because that's generated from the throat, and it's not generated from embouchure, so you're having to voice.
Mm-hmm.
You can generate it from embouchure. That's one way of doing it, but I prefer to do it.
Thinner, don't you, in sound?
It can do, and it can be. No, it can get, the sound can get thinner, but there's less control over it. So I'm doing it with mouth position and throat position, and basically I started to sing a lot more, which helped in the beginning because. But this again, I didn't have to do it that much, but sometimes again it depends. If you're engaging with the horn on an everyday basis, then all of this becomes a lot easier. But if you're like me and you have a busy life as well, and a challenging life to balance all those things, doing these warm-up exercises, these preparatory exercises are really, really useful. So I might spend a lot of time, if I've had 2 days away from the horn, and just basically putting lots of air through it before I'm going to attempt to overblow. And then that immediately gets me to that spot where I'm able to produce third octave relatively easily, like that A flat, for example. You know that can be tricky sometimes, but. You know I mean, you know, it's fortunate I've been playing today, so, but, you know, yesterday I wasn't able to do that, you know. But that's the thing about this horn, is like, it's really responsive, and it doesn't take that long. It takes about, you know, I don't know, not very long to actually kind of get back in touch with it, so it can actually, you can, and then you're kind of, for me, then, when you've done some time with that, then you're ready to play, because that also affects the sound. Each of these stages affects the sound. So when I go to play genuine altissimo, I'm still voicing, up there. But it's responding as well, because I've done all the work to prepare for that. And now the horn is properly responding, it's in tune. I'm kind of quite happy with the sound and how that's projecting. And also, that, on most instruments, you can't do altissimo quietly, you know, because, or in tune. So, yeah, I mean, and as I say, I'm still experimenting with it.
Because you've had this horn now, what, 5 years, is it?
5 years, but it's 5 years, and that's gone by really quick.
And each time you get it out, it's still teaching you.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So you're still learning. You know, what it can actually generate. And because there's no restriction in the horn, I understand that when you're playing, say, with Emil on drums, you're in that position where you can experiment a little bit, and you can actually just try, well, I'll try this, but it's just like that. I always think of it like playing chess, where you're 3 places ahead of where you are on the board, because you can actually think about and respond to him easier as he's opening a door for you. And you can decide whether you want to enter that door or open your own door.
I think you're absolutely right about that. But I think what I was doing on the old instrument, because I was over adjusting because of the tuning of it, and that's just sometimes that's the thing with the older instruments. And I mean, you know how much I love the sound of my SBA. So I really did love the sound of it, but and how it felt in the hands and kind of how it played. And you've kind of been playing it for a really long time, but there's so many things that you do that you don't understand that you're doing until you try to play another instrument in a way and take a step back, and you kind of go, oh, I don't need to do that. Suddenly I don't need to do that, but that means I have to adjust into. And it did keep it, because I loved the sound of it the minute I played this, but I knew I had to adjust to it myself, which is mostly to do with me not forcing things here and relaxing more and adjusting to the whole new kind of dynamic paradigm which it kind of threw up, which was that's an interesting one. This is an entirely new world, even though it's something I've been playing for 30 years. This is actually a new world, because all of those other possibilities were not open at that point, and then suddenly it opened quite a lot of those sort of doors.
It's interesting what you're saying, because the other endorsers that are on this horn say exactly the same thing. I mean, I just had a message from Pete Wareham literally a few days ago, just saying, I don't know what you've done with this horn, but it's just getting better and better. Every time I play it, I put it down and I look at it, and I just think, I just can't believe what this horn's giving me. You know, in all his different styles of playing he's doing. You know, and as you say, it's that channel of the volume of air that you can't get in other horns. So cons you can, but then you've got tuning issues. You know, with that.
I remember the first summer. You're absolutely right. I remember the first summer that I got this, and when I had some time off and I could actually do some practice, and I literally hadn't done it for years, but I one day I actually did 11 hours practice.
Wow.
And I hadn't done that since I'd just graduated, like I had, God knows, in the 80s, you know. So, and when I had time to do that. And I was at the bottom of the garden, and the miss was like, hey, are you coming up for dinner? She'd been here all day. And I was literally didn't know that time had gone, you know, and I was literally down there for 11 hours, just engrossed in kind of doing it. And it was like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
And it just draws you in, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it's great, because it's the whole, as I say, when you have time to spend with it and you can actually put some hours into it, you don't really want to pack it up again, you know. So I was lucky this summer. I you know, and again, you're discovering new kind of corners of it, because as I say, I've kind of recently got into, you know, the last couple of years I got into the whole multiphonics thing, just from not the usual way that people play multiphonics, but just that whole sort of playing very low level. This kind of thing, which is basically, there's a classical composer called Lachmann who really writes for orchestra like this. So basically it's the point where the sound is going to disappear. So he writes for not just woodwinds, he writes for strings, where basically it's the sound you can get from strings, where you're just touching the bow on the string. And this low level sound basically has a really strong emotional, psychological effect. And I actually hadn't checked his music out until someone said, this sounds a bit like what Lachman does for, and I was like, who's that?
Yeah.
And I checked his stuff out, and it's all very low volume.
Yeah.
Subtle manipulation of whatever instrument it is at low volume. You get these really eerie, ethereal sounds. And I was like, I've become really fascinated with that. And that's some of the stuff I was doing with Emil Karlsson, the drummer.
Yeah.
Getting into that and just allowing the instrument, try to playing it, just find different ways to play it that are slightly unconventional, that will produce this low volume, very resonant, timbral, textural stuff, which is like, that's a very new thing for me to do. I'm normally into kind of modal thrash outs, burnout stuff.
So this is what the horn does. It lets you experiment and go into areas you've never done before.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you are right. It's just that.
You're barely touching the note.
Just barely touching.
And I actually don't know what it's going to do, because that's I mean, it's literally kind of improv, because I didn't know that's a new one for me. I just discovered that by putting the C down here with these fingerings. It does that.
Yeah.
So that's a new one.
Yeah.
So I need to go away and practice that one quite a bit more. But it's literally just come out as an experiment, because this is how I was recording with Emil. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do, so I'm going to try things like this.
Yeah.
And it's kind of almost setting up loops that go on for quite a long time, just with that sound.
Yeah.
And obviously you want to change it at some point, but it's setting up very static information that you're basically affecting by the timbre, and that's the venting down here. So that's a new thing.
Yeah, which is fantastic, and I think it's a joy for me listening to people, contact me afterwards and just say that it's bringing more out of the playing. So I feel like I'm actually helping and contributing with your new album that you're going to do, because it gives you that freedom, being able to move into it.
The thing I really want to do is I want to find a space where I can put all that stuff in kind of more conventional music. But I think there's a bit on Coltrane Live with Miles from Paris in early 60s.
Okay.
And he's basically up here, and he's doing something very similar. You can hear he's just found something, which is a kind of, and everyone is really outraged. You can hear the audience kind of going, almost, they're starting to get unsettled and they start to boo. But he's kind of found this yodeling thing that he can do up there. And he's literally, you can hear him discovering it on the gig, or playing it on the gig and kind of like working with it, and people were really outraged by that. It's so it definitely kind of, this stuff kind of it's definitely been done a lot before. There's a guy over here called Evan Parker and John Butcher who've spent a lot of time with this stuff. So I'm just trying to find my way with it, because it's opened the door for me, that I've kind of like, oh, this stuff's really interesting. But it initially kind of came from Coltrane experimenting with those things in the upper register and with the left hand venting.
I'm just pleased I've helped.
Yeah. Oh, God, I don't think I would have gone down that road.
You wouldn't have gone down that path.
Yeah. You're to blame.
That's the old right this down. With the So that's basically, we'll just end it there at the way that I hope people understood about the different sounds that people get, and how and why people have bigger sounds in their horns, and this horn helps in that direction.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
We'll do another series on a different subject later on. Thank you, Ed.
No, thank you, Dave. Thank you.